A library is a quiet ecosystem, teeming with stories and secrets. Among the shelves, each book is a doorway, offering a glimpse into another world. People come seeking knowledge, entertainment, or a moment of peace. The air hums with the silent energy of a million narratives. But sometimes a different kind of story unfolds, one not found in any book. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, a whisper in the silent halls. Even in the safest places, the unexpected can take root. The library's order relies on unspoken rules: move quietly, respect others, return what you borrow. But what happens when someone breaks those rules? When quiet observation turns into something more focused, more predatory? This is a story about that disruption, how a place of comfort became a source of unease. It's a true account of how borrowing a book led one person down a path of fear. Sometimes the most frightening stories are the ones unfolding silently around us. Clara, a frequent visitor, found the library her refuge. One afternoon, she selected a book on ancient art and settled by the window. As she opened it, a small folded note slipped into her lap. The handwriting was neat. "I saw you choose this book. You have excellent taste. The way the light catches your hair is like a painting." At first, it seemed harmless, maybe a secret admirer. In a digital world, a handwritten note felt oddly charming. She tucked it away, thinking little of it. But this note was different. Deliberate, not accidental. The author had watched her, seen her choice. That detail was the first hint. This was targeted, not random. The words echoed in her mind. The way the light catches your hair. It was poetic, but also intensely personal. Someone had studied her, left a message just for her. The initial charm faded, replaced by a faint unease. The library's sanctuary had been breached by unseen eyes. A week later, Clara returned, almost forgetting the note. She browsed, checked out a novel, and at home found another folded paper inside. This was no coincidence. It was a pattern. The note: "I was happy to see you again. You wore the blue coat. I followed you to the fiction aisle. You almost picked Hemingway, but chose Faulkner." The detail was chilling. The observer tracked her movements, knew her choices. The library now felt like a stage. Clara, the unwilling performer. Each visit brought a new note, each more specific. "You seem distracted today. I like the way you bite your lip when concentrating." The observer was building a profile. Her habits, moods, appearance. The secret admirer fantasy vanished, replaced by the certainty of surveillance. The method was as disturbing as the message. How did they do it? Clara felt exposed, her sanctuary transformed into a place of anxiety. The notes were no longer charming. They were evidence of obsession. The sense of being watched grew unbearable. Clara realized she was the subject of someone's intense, unwelcome focus. The notes changed. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Compliments became commands. "You should wear your hair down. Try the color red." The observer was no longer content to watch. They wanted to control. Clara found herself thinking about the notes as she dressed, avoiding red, tying her hair up. The writer's disappointment showed in later notes. "I was sad to see your hair was up. That gray sweater is so drab." The notes became tools of manipulation, shaping Clara's behavior. The tone turned possessive. "No one else understands you the way I do. We have a connection." The word "we" was chilling, implying a bond Clara never agreed to. The romantic fantasy had curdled into obsession. The library was no longer a sanctuary. It was a trap. Clara's sense of self was under siege. The notes were no longer about admiration. They were about ownership. The observer's fantasy was becoming a nightmare for Clara. She realized she needed to act before things escalated further. Desperate, Clara changed her routine, visiting a different library in another town. She hoped to escape the observer's gaze in the anonymity of a new place. But when she opened her borrowed book, another note awaited. "Did you think you could hide from me? The university library is a nice change, but I prefer your local branch." The observer had followed her, across the city, beyond the library walls. The threat was no longer confined to one place. Clara's world shrank. Every stranger became a suspect. The observer was a hunter, not just a watcher. The feeling of being stalked was now undeniable. Clara was isolated, trapped in paranoia. The note was clear. There was no escape. The observer's reach extended everywhere. Clara was no longer just a reader. She was prey. She knew she needed help. Overwhelmed, Clara gathered the notes and returned to her local library. She asked to speak privately with the head librarian, Ms. Albright. In a small office, Clara laid out the notes and told her story. Ms. Albright's concern turned to alarm as she read the progression from admiration to obsession. The library staff sprang into action, alerting other branches, increasing security, and reviewing footage. The quiet guardians of the library became Clara's allies. They created a safety plan. Clara would notify staff when she arrived and left, never go to her car alone. The library was no longer passive. It was on high alert. Staff watched for anyone lingering near Clara's usual sections. The ecosystem had mobilized to protect one of its own. Clara was no longer alone in her fear. The staff's vigilance gave her hope. The library's trust was being restored, one careful step at a time. With the library's support, Clara reported everything to the police. The notes became evidence in a stalking investigation. The act of reporting shifted the power. Clara was no longer a silent victim. Under security's watchful eye, she visited the library one last time. As predicted, a final note appeared. "You told them. You broke our trust. You have ruined everything." The writer's fantasy shattered, replaced by anger. Police lifted a fingerprint from the note, matched it with security footage, and identified the suspect. A library page with access to the stacks. Confronted, he confessed. The unseen observer finally had a face. The threat was neutralized. This story is a reminder. Public spaces rely on trust. When that trust is broken, fear can take root. Listen to your instincts. Speak up if something feels wrong. By taking action, Clara reclaimed her safety and helped protect the library for everyone. Sometimes the most important stories are the ones we choose to tell.